Morning, Rob.
Hey, good morning, Mike. How you doing today?
I'm okay. How are you?
Pretty good. This is a special show of the Lumped Up Universe.
Yeah, it's a Rocker Mike and Rob presents what?
Mike Baker, the guy behind Rocker Mike. And we going I pretty much want to talk a little bit about your history, how you got into rock and how you became a Rastafarian and all this other stuff. And you know, how do we start, Mike? Where do we start? How come you what made you choose rock and roll? Were you always like a kid that liked rock and roll?
Yeah. Okay, it's an interesting story. It's probably not different than a lot of people, but when I was a kid, I always loved music from a very young age, like 3, 4 years old, even before I knew what anything was. I always loved playing my parents' records. My parents had stacks of 45s, albums, stuff like that. Uh, my mom was a little less musical than my dad, but she liked music too. My dad, did the whole Columbia House 20 records for a penny thing and all that. So there was always stuff coming into the house. And then, like most kids in our generation, our parents got divorced. All right. And I was the oldest. I had a younger sister that I wasn't that close with. And then I kind of was by myself a lot. And I just music was an escape. Okay. So I used to listen to albums for hours at a time. And it was all different kinds of stuff. It could be anything from Beatles to the Rolling Stones to Elvis to uh, Johnny Cash. I remember we had a greatest hits of Johnny Cash in the house. Um, all that stuff from like the 60s that was popular in my mother and father's time into the 70s when I was a kid, growing up. And I used to, there was 8 tracks we had in the house. I used to listen to a lot of stuff. Um, and it was an escape. And then as I got older, the first band that I was really, really into was The Doors.
All right.
Okay. And it was just something about the lyrics, something about Morrison's voice and everything. And it really kind of hit me. And I started listening to the albums a lot. And then from there, it kind of branched out to other things. New Wave was big at the time. I was like a huge Blondie fan. The Cars I loved as a kid. Um, and then slowly that would change, and I would get like, I started listening to the radio, a lot of like late night shows like Dr. Demento.
I
uh,
remember that.
Remember Dr. Demento?
Yeah.
Yeah, and like WLIR 92.7 was an alternative radio station, and they would play, new wave and punk at night. They would play. And I was starting to get interested in hardcore, which was in the early '80s was big in New York and LA, and
Are you talking like the metal bands?
no, more like the second generation of punk.
Okay.
Okay, stuff like the Bad Brains and all the bands that used to play at like A7, which is now Niagara.
Yeah.
I was starting to get into that when I was about 13, 14 years old. Um, at the worry of my mother, wondering what the hell I was listening to. Um,
Like any
but
mother back in the days. What the hell is
yeah,
that?
yeah, what the hell is that? And I mean, then when I was old enough to kind of get out, I started seeing some of these bands. I never got to see the Bad Brains. They kind of were like a little bit ahead of me, like a year or two at A7. I did see them in bigger clubs, but
But did you see one of the guys play not too long? Or was that from the band called Death? Which guy you saw in A7 not too long ago?
that was Chip from Pure Hell.
Pure Hell, all right.
Yeah, Pure Hell was the black punk band from the '70s here in New York. And he has a new band now, and I went to check them out. I got to talk to him and everything afterwards. That was the last time I was in there. They do like every month or two, they do these like A7 reunion shows where they'll have like old bands and new bands and stuff play. Um, I was really into like the Circle Jerks, Black Flag. Uh,
You know, the Circle Jokes are going to have a reunion this year.
Yeah, I know. They've been around, and Morrison has been playing in a band called Off.
Okay.
Last year, he just played here too. But my roots were kind of in that. But again, I was always like very interested in the history of rock and roll. I would study it. I would get books on it. I would read about it. I would watch TV shows about it, and I was like a sponge. I sucked everything up. But I'm like that. I'm like that with everything, Rob. You've never been to my place, but I have like an extensive amount of books. Read them all. Uh, I'm self-taught. I wasn't good in school. Okay, I wasn't really like an A student all the time. I was kind of like a B student. Like some A's, some B's, some C's, some D's. I failed a few classes. I wasn't like an honor roll student. Okay, because I didn't like fit in. I was always kind of different, and that attracted me to punk. That attracted me eventually to reggae, and a Rastafari life.
Yeah, that's unique. Not too many people, not too many, especially. I don't meet too many white guys that are into that.
Well, yeah, I mean that the fact that I'm white, prevented me kind of for many years really delving into it because I didn't think I could. But in the true nature of the Rastafari life, it doesn't matter what you are. There's Japanese Rastas. Okay, it doesn't matter. It's not about.
It's almost like Muslims. There's all kind of Muslims.
Yeah, yeah.
White,
I mean,
Chinese, black.
yeah,
They come in every color.
right. It's Rastafari is not a it's not a religion. There's no real, religions are man-made. Okay, religions are not based all the time on what the Lord wanted or what's in the Bible, or they come up with their own rules for things. The Catholic Church is a good example. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, they've come up with all kinds of rules and regulations that really are not natural. Okay, and really are meant to just kind of control you. So I don't call Rastafari a religion. It's not a. It's a way.
Technically,
It's a way of
you
life.
want to get started. Technically, if you're Catholic, you're supposed to donate 10% of your check
Yes,
every Sunday
yes.
to church,
You're
which is like,
supposed to.
what the hell did they come with that rule? When I was a kid, it was whatever you can give.
Well, you know what? Because they're not getting what they always got.
Yeah.
I remember reading something years ago that like everybody gives $1 at mass. Well, they've been doing that since like the 40s. So $1 it doesn't go far anymore in the Catholic Church.
Yeah, you got to give a little bit more.
Well, the Mormon religion is even more strict. Like you got to give 10% of your earnings, and if you don't, they'll question you, and that's something that's a turnoff to me.
That's fucked up.
Yeah, it is.
That's where you leave the religion. So
Well, I would think, yeah.
So for being a Rastafarian, what is it that you have to do? Like, what rules do you have to follow? Like, how do you get into this? What rules and what do they have a God? What the hell do they pray to? What's at the end of the tunnel? What's the payoff for being a Rasta?
It's not as different from other Christian religions that you would think. Okay, we believe God. We refer to God as Jah, which is short for Jehovah, which is the name of the Jewish God in the Old Testament. Okay, so you're praying to the same God.
Yeah.
Okay, and we believe in one important thing about the Rastafari life is about being conscious of things. Okay, and when I say that, I mean like have knowledge. Don't just believe everything you're told. Okay, there's the world, which is referred to as Babylon. Okay, Babylon is the sinful world that will trick you. Okay, this is the world that we have to live in every day. Okay, this is all the bullshit and all the lies and the conspiracies and all these things that we deal with every day. Okay, New York City's a great example of ancient Babylon. Okay, you got everything that sex to lies to cheating to murder to all the things that's bad in the world is referred to as
To me, I
Babylon.
thought that was
Okay.
Vegas.
Well, Vegas is another good
Sin
example of
City,
Babylon.
baby.
Yeah, yeah. Now, the thing is, you know, Ra- Rastafari's try to live a clean life, okay, in the every definition of that word. But we're also true to ourselves. We know ourselves, and we educate ourselves. All right, and Rastas, when I first became familiar with the way of life was in the 80s. Okay, I got into Bob Marley, which is a typical kind of almost stereotypical way to get into it. All right, because Bob Marley is the biggest proponent of Rastafari ever.
Yeah,
Okay,
definitely.
his music, what he spoke of, it's done more to push that spirituality than anything else. So, but in the 80s, I started getting into reggae, and I was seeing bands like Black Uru, Steel Pulse. Uh, uh, there was a band called the Eye Towels I saw a few times, and I was buying the records. And then when I got, uh, there was an apartment I rented on 10th Street between First and A when I was very young, and the super there was a Rasta.
Yeah.
Okay, and this was at a time in my life when I was really broke. I mean, like destitute. All right, and I was working two jobs, and it was hard to make ends meet even with that. I used to work at Canal Jeans. Remember
Oh
Canal
yeah, I
Jeans?
remember that on
Yeah,
that was down by Broadway, right?
Broadway near Canal. Yeah, like Broome Street around there.
Yeah.
And I had another job at night that I did, and it was tough, but I was having fun. I was young. I was having fun, but it was hard to make ends meet. And this super, his name was Stewart. He used to talk to me, and he would help me out. Like he knew I didn't have a lot to eat, so he'd give me food to eat and give me a little weed to smoke. Okay. And hang out with him. And he would have parties, and his other Rasta friends would be there. And sometimes he'd invite me. I'd come downstairs and I'd hang out a bit. And what I liked about that community, without really even knowing a lot about it, was everybody was very intelligent. You could have a conversation about anything. These people were not stupid people. Very informed, interesting. Okay. It was funny. They all had white girlfriends. Okay. And it was something I wasn't used to it, but I was attracted to it. And they asked me, would you like to be involved? And I'm like, well, I don't know if I can. I wasn't interested in getting into any kind of religion. Okay. And at that point I was just like, no, fuck that, because I was raised Catholic.
Yeah.
And that didn't exactly work out for me. All right. So I just didn't want to deal with that. I had to get my life straightened out. I had to, get my life started. Basically, I was young, but I was listening to the music, and then I never forgot this guy, his generosity, and I think he's still there because I could have sworn I seen him a few months ago on that block. He's an old guy now, but anyway, um, yeah, and years went by, and I got away from the music and got away from thinking about Rasta. Okay. I mean, anytime I heard about it, I understood, what it was. And then many years later, like around 2015, I got a book about reggae music, and I read it, and it was a very good book about all these bands. And also, I had read John Lydon from the Sex Pistols,
Yeah.
book called "There Is an Energy," and he talked about how after the Pistols he went to Jamaica and he signed a lot of bands for Virgin Records. They were reggae bands. And reading those two books rekindled my memory basically about reggae music, how great it was, and Started listening to it again. They would, the book was talking about all these bands, and I'm like, I saw these guys. I got a couple of their albums, and I got tons of albums, CDs, and I started listening to everything again. And then, for some reason, I started really listening. And real reggae music is very spiritual. It's almost like gospel music, okay? And it's very rebellious.
Oh yeah, very rebellious.
And I started listening to the music and the words a lot more closely than I ever had. And it hit me. It was like an epiphany, like, wow, okay. And now I said, well, who was Rastafari? Okay, well, Rastafari was, he became in 1930 the emperor, the 225th emperor of Ethiopia, Haile Selassie I. Okay, Rastafari was his name before he became Haile Selassie. And I started really reading about him and delving into what the connection was within that religion, for lack of a better word. Okay, and I got it. I got it. And it biblically, it's there. There's verses in the Bible that point to Haile Selassie as the second coming of Christ. Christ returned in his kingly character. To be a Rastafari, Rob, you have to unlearn what you've been learned, what you've been taught. Okay? In the West, we all learn that, whether you're Catholic or Protestant, it's almost the same thing. Jesus died on the cross, and one day he's going to come back, right? Okay, well, what if he did? Okay, so that kind of, that spin on it, and it changes things, because now it means you're living in the end times. You're living in the Revelation times. And Rastas believe that. Okay, Rastas believe we are living in the end times. Nobody knows when the world's going to end. Okay, but the Messiah did return within Haile Selassie I. Now, that may sound crazy to the average person, but again, I told you have to kind of unlearn what you've been taught.
Let me ask you, since a lot of people has this guy performed any miracle? What makes him the second coming of the Messiah?
Well, because of the biblical prophecies, like in Revelation, there's a particular chapter. Hold on. Okay, it says, like, Revelations 5:5 says, and one of the elders said to me, weep no more. Behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David, has conquered, so that he can open the scroll and its 7 seals. Okay, now, Haile Selassie, just to understand his history for a second, the 225th emperor of Ethiopia, all those emperors are in line from the ancient union of Solomon and Sheba. Okay, and Solomon is the son of David. So that's the root of David.
One of his sons went back with Sheba, because he's the one.
Sheba slept with Solomon, and had a child called Menelik, and they went back to Ethiopia and converted the people of Ethiopia, which they were kind of, I believe, pagans or sun worshippers, and into Judaism. Okay, and then eventually, as time went on, Ethiopia would convert from Judaism to Christianity through the apostle Philip. Okay, in Acts, in the New Testament, Philip one day is walking down the street, and he meets an Ethiopian assistant to the Queen of Ethiopia. Okay, and he's reading the book of Isaiah from the Old Testament, and he tells him about Christ, and he believes, and then Christ, he believes what Philip tells him, and then goes back to Ethiopia and ends up converting the country to Christian. It's the only country on the face of the earth to ever convert like that.
And you know what? It's funny. They do have tied to like the Holy Grail, right? The covenant,
Not the
the
Grail,
art,
the Ark. Yeah,
the
the
art of
Ark
the
of the Covenant.
covenant.
Yeah, the Ark. Yeah, the Ark of the Covenant. We did that
Yeah.
conspiracy show on it. Uh, it's important to the history of Ethiopia, and as Rastafaris have a close relationship with Ethiopia, very close. That's because Haile Selassie was Ethiopian. All right, now we believe that Haile Selassie is the second coming of Christ, so naturally we're going to be associated very closely with Ethiopia, Ethiopian stories, legends, and stuff like that. And there's a book in Ethiopia called the Kebra Nagast, and that's basically the story of how Solomon and Sheba met, conceived a child. The child grew up, went back to meet his father, and ended up leaving with the ark and bringing it back to Ethiopia where
And
it
the thing
sits
is,
today.
people thought the art was stolen, but I think Sullivan knew that his son took the art, right?
According to the Kebra Nagast, he when he realized his son took the ark, he chased him, but he could never catch up to him because there were angels helping
Yeah.
Menelik. And he was traveling too fast, and Solomon realized this and said, well, I guess it's all part of God's plan, and he turned around and went
Yep.
back. So yeah, I mean, that's the Ethiopian Coptic Church, which a lot of Rastafaris align themselves with in some ways. Some of them actually do end up converting full to the Ethiopian Coptic Church. Some say that Bob Marley did this at the very end of his life. I kind of think it's up in the air. There is some people that say it happened. I think his wife, Rita, said it did. So I guess it's possible. But he did get a half Ethiopian, half Rastafari kind of funeral
Wow.
when he died. So, yeah.
That's amazing.
It is. It is. And again, one thing too is as a Rasta, we believe that, your body is your temple. Okay. So we try to eat right. Most of us are vegetarian or even vegan. There's no real, you ask me what you have to be, what you have to do. I would say the most important thing is you have to realize that Haile Selassie the First is the second coming of Christ. Christ returned in his kingly character as predicted in the Bible. If you don't believe that, and then you're not a Rasta, as far as I'm concerned. I don't know what you are, but you got you're believing something. You have to believe in something that it's named after, right?
Yeah. Because the Jewish people got a weird Messiah. That rabbi that they sometimes in the car that they show driving around, they think that guy's the Messiah too.
Well, that's the Hasidic people, and the Orthodox Hasidic people. They are a radical kind of sect of Judaism. Now, Judaism is that's up for grabs too. Okay, because there's been so many changes within that religion over the centuries. It's hard to pinpoint who the exact Jews are anymore. The Jews that are in Israel, they're Ashkenazi Jews. Okay, which means that they're really European converts. When they're not part of the Jewish race that was earlier. Okay, because in 70 A.D. the Romans burned down Jerusalem. They sacked it. Okay, and in a war, and all the Jews were scattered all over the world. It wasn't until 1948, 49, when Israel was formed, that they had a homeland again. But it was all those centuries that they didn't. So they scattered all over the place, going into Europe, going into Russia, okay, and scattering all over and converting.
A lot of people really believe that Hitler might have killed every single actually real Jew that was left.
Well, I in my readings, okay, he killed a lot of people. He killed a lot of Jews. Obviously, 6 million. They say. Um, did he kill everyone? No, because
Of
many
course.
got out. Okay, but he decimated it. Okay,
But I mean, from
but
the like original like blood, he probably killed a lot of generation. Really, like that was handed down to down that they were just all over the place.
well, that would be up for debate, Rob. I'll tell you why. You know, you would think that once they scattered in AD 70, then where did it go? Where the racial purity
Yeah,
go?
it's probably all mixed.
Okay, it's all mixed. It's not there anymore. Now there were some, I'm sure, that stayed behind and mixed with other Semitic people that probably ended up being
Yeah.
Muslims later on.
Or some of them even
Okay,
became
and
Catholic.
well, yeah. I mean, well, Jews converted
Yeah.
to Christianity. Okay, and they did stay behind, and in that area. But uh, you know, you can make an argument that, and I believe this, that the people of Ethiopia, the black Jews of East Ethiopia, because there are black Jews, they're called
Yeah, they're the
Falasha
one that
Jews.
actually watch over the
Okay,
art.
they watch over the ark. Well, the Ethiopian Coptic Church is responsible
Yeah.
for that too. All right. The Falasha Jews kind of were separate from everybody else in Ethiopia, and over the years they've been brought to Israel. Israel's brought over groups of them to live in Israel, and they were accepted somewhat as original Jews. Their traditions go back to Solomon's
Wow.
time, okay, which is different than the traditions of
Yeah.
Jesus's time. Okay, they used to do animal sacrifice. They didn't do that in Jesus's time. Okay, they had given up that. All right, and so when they kind of like in the 20th century, Ethiopia was still a very mysterious place in the early 20th century. But what happened was people became more aware of what was going on there as time went on through the 20th century. Because of World War II, Italy had attacked Ethiopia. People were more aware of what was going on in that country. There was these Falasha Jews that the Ethiopians all knew about, didn't really have much to do with them, just let them be. And they were like doing the traditions of the early Jews. They were still doing animal
Damn.
sacrifices. Yeah.
You know,
So,
like in voodoo
but
magic, they still do animal sacrifice.
yeah, well, killing something that's living was always a strong method to talk to your God, right? Or make an appeal to your God. You
Yeah.
kill a lamb,
And the
you
pagans
kill a
weren't
goat.
even pushing them.
So,
Like pagans even went far. They would sacrifice a virgin so the crops it would rain and shit like that.
yeah, that's totally different. That's a whole different thing.
So think about how fucked up this shit is. Got to sacrifice something living.
Yeah, yeah, right. Not my thing.
So what do they like for Rasta? What do they give up to sacrifice? Like if they want something, or is there anything like that in Rastafarianism?
Well, the lifestyle itself is a sacrifice. You try to uh, live a clean life. It's not always easy to do that. Okay. One thing I do, the way I look at it, and again, there's no real set of rules within Rastafari, so everybody's a little different, and there's different what are called mansions. Okay, you have the 12 tribes, okay, which is a sect that's probably the most liberal, most accepting of white
Yeah,
people or other races, okay. Uh, and then you have the Nyabingi, which are very conservative, kind of the original
yeah.
Rastas. They're the ones that bang the
Okay.
drums a lot, live up in the hills of Jamaica by themselves, and they're very strict. They kind of like are, the men do everything, the women cook. very simple lives. Uh, then you have the Bobo Shantis, which are very different. They're the ones that walk around in white with the turbans on their
Okay.
heads, kind of. Okay. And they kind of keep to themselves in communes. They also believe in another divine character named Charles Edwards that is basically on equal footing as Haile Selassie. I don't subscribe to that, but they do, and I don't really have a problem with it. In fact, one of the Rastafaris that I listen to a lot on YouTube, a guy named Priest Isaac, he's a
Okay.
Bobo Shanti. But yeah, um, they have a whole thing in Jamaica where people get crowned in a ritual ceremony to become part of that religion. Okay, the Bobo Shanti religion, and then there's even like one or two others that have kind of popped up in recent times with slightly different beliefs. Um, you got to understand, like, Rastafari started out as an Afro-centric religion. It still is, okay? Uh, it's, mostly black, uh, but it came out of, in Jamaica, it came out of the colonial, anti-colonial struggle, okay? Because Jamaica was under the control of the British, and blacks were slaves up until 1830 or so, and and then after that they were second class citizens. Now, one person that you have to understand is very important to Rastafari people is
Okay.
Marcus Garvey. All right,
I
do you
have
know who
heard of
Marcus
him.
Garvey was? All right, he was a black leader in the early part of the 20th century, right after World War One. He was a Jamaican guy born in the St. Anne province of Jamaica. And he was a preacher, in a sense, great speaker. And he preached about black civil rights, but in the sense of education was a big thing.
Yeah, you gotta
Educate
educate,
yourself.
because what was the first
Okay.
thing? Never teach the slaves how to read or write was the big thing back in the early days. They didn't
Right.
want the slaves to be educated
Right.
at all.
Well,
Yeah.
knowledge is power. Okay. So you couldn't have people gaining power through knowledge. They'd realize ways out of it. They could
Yeah.
rise up. Okay. So yeah, I mean the slave owners did all
And there
that
was
kind of
slave
stuff.
owners that if they
Uh,
knew the guy was too educated, they would just kill him.
yeah. Well, they
Yeah.
didn't let you read. Okay. If you and they would teach you the Bible, but in
Yeah.
just speak it to you. Basically, they wouldn't let you get smart. But Marcus Garvey taught that education is very important, and he preached something called repatriation. Okay. And repatriation was the idea that blacks should go back to Africa, okay, and that it's their homeland. And it was an idea that many did believe, and he got to a point with his United Negro um, Improvement Association (UNIA). He actually bought some steamships and took people back to some land that he had gotten in Liberia in
Okay.
Africa. And there were some blacks in that time, late, 1919, 1920, that did go there, okay, back to Africa. And, if you listen and read his speeches, I have a book or two that has all the speeches in it. And you can listen on YouTube. He was a great speaker. You can hear his voice actually. And he preached about, uh, that blacks need to. Well, one thing he did was he acted almost as a prophet. Many people believe that he was kind of like a John the
Oh yeah.
Baptist. Okay, like John the Baptist preached the coming of
Yeah.
Jesus, right? Okay, so Marcus Garvey preached the coming of Haile Selassie because he made a speech on more than one occasion where he talked about look to Ethiopia when a king is crowned, it'll be the savior kind of thing. and that was in the early 1920s, and in 1930, Haile Selassie was
Wow.
crowned. Now, and then in Revelations, there's the talk of, the second coming will be called the Lord of Lords, King of Kings, okay, and Lords of Lords, and that was Haile Selassie's
Wow.
title. Okay, another title he had was Elect of God. Okay, in his long title, that was one of the phrases, and in the Bible, in the Old Testament, the elect of God is used a few times. It's also used many times in the book of Enoch, which we've talked about a few times.
Yeah, that's the one with all the 14 angels and the gods and all kind of stuff and giants.
Right. And, Enoch referred to that title, the elect of God.
Let me ask you a question. Bob Marley got to see him, right? And he felt like, his wife?
No.
Rita
got to see him.
When we talked about it for some reason, she said she was overwhelmed and she saw something.
Yes. Well, we're coming up to the anniversary of that on Tuesday, April 21st, 421. Okay, is the anniversary of Haile Selassie coming to Jamaica in 1966, and every person that was there, and every Rastafarian in Jamaica was there at the airport to greet him. Okay, and Rita tells the story, and many people have a similar story where people felt that he was looking at every one of them. When he was going through the motorcade, every person, the thousands and thousands of people, all felt like this was a god. This was a person big enough. And Rita says that she looked at his hands and she even saw the stigmata, which is the holes in the hands. Okay, from Christ. So, excuse me. So everybody that was there had a spiritual experience, and and many of these people ended up being reggae artists. Bunny Wailer or Peter Tosh or Joseph Hill from Culture, a bunch of other guys, all were there, and they experienced it, and they would sing about it in their music. Yeah.
So let me ask you, Skype, that actually came from reggae, right?
Ska came first. Okay, ska was a Jamaican music that was popular.
But that is from Jamaica, 60s. Right? That does have Jamaica root. That was never really here,
No, it was never here. It started in Jamaica.
How come later on there's so many bands like that, and they're like a bunch of white guys?
Yeah, well, it appealed to all different
like the
kinds
Mighty
of people.
Bostonia, they're pretty much that's what they are.
The Mighty Bosstones, yeah. I mean, they're like a ska band. Even during Marley's time, when he would play the United States, he would play in front of 90% white audiences. The black people in the 70s, most of them did not catch on to the reggae stuff. They did later. Some did. Some were Rastafarians right away. Okay, but the majority of people listening to reggae to go see Bob Marley, most people, it was mostly white crowds, college crowds, stuff like that.
Mike, let me ask you another. What's the deal with the dreads?
All right. I'm glad you asked me that. Okay. There's actually a biblical quote that explains it. And I'll read it to you in a second here.
There's even a way that wash them. You're not supposed to cut them. It's very weird.
Yeah. There's in Leviticus 21 verse 5 in the Old Testament, it says, "They shall not make bald patches on their heads, nor shave off the edges of their beards, nor make any cuts on their body." Okay. Also, it says in Numbers 6 chapter, verse 1 through 27, "And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the people of Israel and say to them, when either a man or a woman makes a special vow, the vow of a Nazarite, to separate himself to the Lord, he shall separate himself from wine and strong drink. He shall drink no vinegar made from wine or strong drink, and shall not drink any juice of grapes or eat grapes, fresh or dried. All the days of his separation he shall eat nothing that is produced by the grapevine, not even the seeds of the skins. All the days of his vow of separation no razor shall touch his head until the time is completed for which he separates himself to the Lord. He shall be holy. He shall let the locks of hair of his head grow long. Okay. Now, Rastas are kind of like the modern day
Yeah.
Nazarites. All right. You kind of take a vow to separate yourself from the rest of the world. Now, growing locks, it's not easy to do. Okay. Black people, their hair is much more suited to do it. Okay. Uh, Me, I grew my locks. It's a little bit harder to do. But I don't have, me. There's different ways to do it. People sometimes go to a
Yeah.
salon and get it done. I kind of look at that. I kind of look at that as like the easy way out. Okay, you could, if you do it yourself, they look messier, they look sloppier. You're kind of like separating yourself even more because people think it's like dirty and filthy. It's not.
Yeah,
I
there's a
wash
lot
my
of them that
locks.
watch it, but it's a certain way you got to watch it,
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, once your hair locks, it's tight. You could run shampoo through it. I use a special, like a mild type of shampoo that's made for locks. Okay, it's not a harsh, chemical kind of thing going through
Yeah.
my hair, but it cleans them. And I might do it like twice a month. I'll wash them. Okay, and you just let them air dry, and the you start drying with a towel, but you let them air dry, and then what happens is as they dry, they even tighten more, and that's what you want. Okay, so the idea of the locks, like I said, is to separate yourself from everybody else, and that's what you're doing. You're making a statement. Okay. Now, if you notice in that passage I read
Yeah,
about
but they're
not
talking about
drinking,
not drinking wine.
yeah, yeah. Now that passage is about not drinking wine. It also says or strong drink. Now, some Rastafaris take it to a point where you're not supposed to
Yeah.
drink at all. Okay. Uh, but what do Rastas do? They
Yeah.
smoke a lot of weed, right? You know, not all of them. Okay, that's another thing that's like a myth. Okay, there's the myth that all Rastas do is smoke weed. Uh, I know Rastas that don't smoke. Okay, me, I smoke it on occasion. Okay, not every
I
day.
smoke it, I
Okay,
eat it
uh,
almost every day.
yeah, yeah, you probably
Yeah.
do it more than me. Okay, and yeah, and it's, to me, it's within the Rastafari lifestyle. When you get high, you kind of like supposed to treat it as a holy thing. It's almost like taking communion. Okay, you're not gonna just eat a communion wafer. Okay, you're gonna go up to and take communion as a reverence. Okay, so you treat weed the same way. There's biblical passages that point to herbs and weeds and stuff like that, and people believe that that's cannabis they're talking about, and there is some evidence of that. Okay, it's kind of a gray area, but there are medicinal aspects of cannabis. We know that. Okay, it's good for certain things. They give it to cancer patients. Um, but we treat it, if you're in the right frame of mind, you treat it as a way to reflect on yourself. You get high, you smoke the weed, or you can make tea out of
But
it. You can
there's certain
ingest it.
level of high. There's certain level of high that you almost become like you think you're one with everything.
Yeah, well, I think that's the idea. Okay, I think that's you can reach that point and you're at peace.
Yeah, you can really get to that
Now,
point that you're at peace and everything is mellow, everything's relaxed, and everything becomes like
yeah,
one flow.
yeah. Well, listen, it's all about love. God is love. Love is God. That's we want to reach that point as people. We don't want to. One thing about Rastafari is we project positivity as much as possible. Okay, but also we project the truth. All right. So when we're talking, Rastas don't lie. You shouldn't lie. Okay, because when you lie, you kill a part of the world somewhere. All right, that's an old expression. And sometimes when you tell the truth, you might upset people. Okay, you may say shit that nobody wants to hear, but Jesus Christ said the truth will set you free. All right, so that's important. All right, not to like that's a big part of what I do with the conspiracy show with you is we're talking about stuff. Now some of the stuff we talk is
Yeah, of
crazy shit.
course.
Okay, but I also try to bring a level of truth, especially when we talk about the way of the world and politics and what's really going on and things like that. I feel I'm telling the truth. I try to base what I speak of on fact, and I get shit on for it. Okay, people say, "Oh, how could you say that?" Well, because it's true. Sorry if you don't like it. And a big part of the Rastafari lifestyle is we do speak the truth and we do search for the truth. We're always looking. We're always searching. We're always learning. There's no, you know, His Majesty said one time, and there's books of his speeches and quotes, and you can read all that stuff online too. Uh, that if a man, I'm going to paraphrase, if a man doesn't, use his knowledge to teach people,
Yeah.
what's the point, basically? Okay, and he says it much more eloquently, but it's true. And if you have all this knowledge, uh, but you don't preach it, you don't let people know the truth, you're just it's a waste. It's a total waste.
It is a waste if and because there's so many people that have knowledge, but they want to keep it to themselves because they think, oh, if I teach all these people, then what, they might be ahead of me or something. Because I think that's the biggest fear. That's
Yeah,
why a lot of people don't like to teach people. It's almost like work. Why don't you want to teach the new guy everything?
yeah,
Oh, because this guy might be my replacement.
yeah. You might take
You
my
know?
job. Yeah, and that's a mentality I've come across many times. People like that, old timers on a job or something, don't want to show you things. But that again, that's you go out
Yep.
and you learn for yourself. And the Babylon system, which is what we live in. Okay, uh, the government. Okay, remember, like when it comes to education in this country, we
Nah.
don't learn things right. They don't teach children the right things. Okay, uh, you have to go out and learn for yourself. Okay, you can't just be a sheep, and that's why you know being a Rastafari, you're a rebel. It's rebel music. It started out as being the oppressed black man. Okay, talking about his oppressor and how he's going to get out of it and how he's going to be redeemed. Okay, but the music is deeper than that. The words are deeper than that. That it's really
But
about
Mom,
everybody.
if you listen to Bob
Okay.
Marley, a lot of that stuff is what you're talking about. And to the point that he
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
liberated and all this other stuff. You get It's a journey in his songs from the first song all the way to the last song.
Yeah.
It's like,
Exactly. It's a spirit. It's a spiritual journey that really doesn't
yep.
end until you die. And you just hope that you did the right things in your life that you'll pass on and go to what's called Zion or heaven. Okay. Uh,
You know what's right? Was it
that's the
Zion
goal.
the
Okay.
planet on the Matrix? I think they went to
Was it?
Zion,
I don't
man, in the
remember.
Matrix.
They might have called it that. I
And
don't
in
remember the
Zion, that's
name,
where you
but
saw the
you
truth,
know,
and they threw like a
not the
fucking
same thing.
weird disco party. It was fucking weird, man.
Yeah. Not the same Zion.
It sounded good to me.
What?
Dancing around and getting high.
Right.
What's wrong with that, damn it?
No, it's okay. It's okay. Well, one thing too is I gotta say quick is, uh, I think a lot of people get into the Rasta lifestyle because of getting high, and I think that there's a lot of what Rastas like to make fun, and they'll say like an imposter Rasta, okay, where it's like a person that does the look, walks around talking with a
You
Jamaican
know that
accent,
was
whether they're
LL
Jamaican or
Cool
not.
J called
Okay.
Wyclef the imposter roster. Yeah.
Did he call him that?
In
Yeah.
one of his songs, he
I kind
shitted on Wyclef. He say cannabis, you're running around with that Bob Marley imposter. He was talking about Wyclef.
yeah, 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 yeah. I kind of would agree with him. I think a little bit, but a lot of people get into it strictly because they think it's a religion that allows you to get high. All right, and it's not that. Okay, it's you could smoke weed if you want to. You don't have to. Okay, if you want to, and it gets you to a point where you can understand the Bible better, because some people do meditate with the Bible when they are getting high. Okay, some people even, but there's a kind of a new movement within Rastas not to smoke weed. Okay, and then there's some that are like, don't smoke it anymore, eat it. Okay,
I'm like
because
in
when you
a
smoke it,
different. When you eat it, you get much more higher than when you smoke it.
well, yeah. One thing I like the teas. Okay, and I'm not good at making it, but I know people that are, and when I can get my hands on some, I like it. There's a way to draw the THC, I guess, and the can out of the oil out of the leaves. Okay, and you can make like a tea out of it,
Oh
and
man,
that gets you fucked up.
I
That will
can
get
see
you that
that
will that
getting
will
me
get you
super
high.
high. I get high
And
just from eating gummies, man, and I'm like high for 4 days.
yeah. Well, listen,
Dude,
read
that
your
sounds
Bible when you're doing
terrifying.
that. You
Getting
might catch.
that fucking high and then start reading the Bible. Holy shit, you might
Well,
understand the thing.
listen. Well, that's what we're trying to do, and then like I said, there's a movement about not getting high at all. They think that you know, if you're doing it just to get high and for a recreational kind of thing, that defeats the purpose. Okay, and again, there's no rules, so it's not like we're saying you got to do this, you got to do that.
I
You
get
know,
high once in a while so I can see how a Chinese person see the world.
you're too much, man.
You
You
should
are
look at
too
my
fucking
eyes
much.
after that shit.
I know what you mean, and I've seen you like that.
Oh my
You
god,
got to
yeah,
be
we
like
we
that
have
too.
we have been like that many times. We have been like that during the show sometime on YouTube.
Oh, oh yeah. Yep. Now, I actually made a decision this week that I'm gonna pretty much stop drinking. Concentrate more just on the cannabis. Uh, and that's for doctor's
Yeah.
orders kinds of things. You know what I mean? And I'll have a beer every once in a while, but I'm not gonna be pounding liquor and stuff like I was. Getting
Yeah, after
old,
a
man.
while that shit
You know.
fucks you up, man.
Yeah, and I think I enjoy doing the edibles and stuff more than I have in the past. I do enjoy them now, and it's just better, and the alcohol, it's just another thing I'll give up for job. Okay, I gave up eating meat, pork, and chicken. Okay, uh, for job. Okay, no other reason. All right. I mean, I love meat. I was a meat eater like crazy. I was,
Hey,
give me my meatballs on Sunday
I
with
can tell you, I'm not
macaroni.
giving up a good steak for nothing, man. Only once the doctor told me I can't have steak, then that's where I'll give it up.
Well, hey, that's okay, man. And I'm not the kind of person that, are going to
But you know
shit. I'm
what? I
not
don't
one of
have
these
steak like
militant
every day
vegan
either. I might
types.
have a good steak like once like every 2 weeks, you know? No.
Yeah, you can't eat it every day,
You know
man.
what I
You
do?
put on
And
200
I
pounds.
gotta say, I'm hard by this. I probably have a burger a day once in a while. And that's not good, but it's a burger.
Yeah.
And I just
Yeah.
have the burger, no fries, just a burger. And I limit it to what I have on the burger. Sometimes I just a burger with fried onions, or it's just a burger, you know?
Well, the problem with burgers isn't
Yeah, the
always the
bread.
meat; it's the bread. Like uh, when I was eating meat before I switched to vegetarianism, I would sometimes not even eat the bun. I would just take the bun off and eat everything with it, but because protein doesn't let you put on weight, it's the bread that
Yeah, the
packs on weight.
bread.
The French the French fries.
Yeah, sometimes I don't eat fries. Like you know what, I pretty much control when and you know what the problem is. A lot of time, I just want like I don't want like a bunch of fries. I just like one or two, three fries.
Yeah, yeah. Well, listen. One thing I've learned is there's a million ways to make vegetables taste
Yeah,
good now. Okay, and I have several cookbooks that I draw from, and I make different kinds of meals with a lot of different vegetables, different seasoning. I use a lot of turmeric, stuff like that. I eat a lot of beans. I eat a lot of cabbage. Um, all that stuff you could, it's good for you. And when I went that way as a vegetarian, when I became Rastafari, I noticed in about a month or two how much better I felt, how much I did lose some weight, but it wasn't that so much as my mind was clearer. Really, if you've ever, within meat, there's a lot of toxins that stay in your body. It's very hard to digest meat. Uh, it's okay once in a while, but if you're a big meat eater, that stuff stays in your body, okay, and you don't digest it, and it just kind of builds up toxins. And I think that those toxins affect you. I think they affect your mind. I think they affect your thinking. I
I
think
think
I
bacon
believe
does
that.
that to
And
me.
well, anything, you know your body. It might be bacon for you, okay? It might be meat for somebody else, but I think that uh, when you take that out, you'll if you ever decided to go that way, you would see a difference. Not too long.
Damn. I
Yeah,
have. That's what
yeah,
a lot of people say. Once you take out the meat and stuff, I always try to go like on a vegetable diet for at least once a week, a month, just to just clean out my
yeah,
system, like all the toxins and shit. And I'll just eat like a bunch
yeah,
of fucking vegetable, and I'll eat salmon for that week.
yeah. Well, salmon is very good. Try to
Yeah,
get
that's
wild
I
caught
only eat
salmon.
wild
That's
salmon
very good.
because that's the
Yeah,
way you're supposed to eat salmon. It's supposed to be wild.
right, right.
Yeah,
Not farm raised, right?
because farmers, you don't know what the hell they
Well,
put in it.
yeah. Well, Rob, I want to thank you, man, for doing this
Yeah,
interview
nah,
with me.
man. Thank you for all the
Uh,
information, man. I got to figure out how I'm going to write this up for the podcast to let people how to know. Um, if you know what I want you to do, can you send me like write like an intro for this, so I can just send it to me and I'll copy and paste it just
sure.
so people know what we talked about. Because you put out a lot of
Okay.
fascinating thing, and I want to get it right. I want to put a good description because I'm also going to put like a bunch of probably like a bunch of rosters and stuff for the YouTube. I'm gonna look up rosters and put a bunch of.
All right. Call me. Call
All
me
right,
after the show.
I will. But give me a few minutes, cause I gotta let the thing
I know.
download and process. That takes about 5 minutes, and then I'll call
Right.
you. But Mike, definitely great
Okay.
show, man. A lot of information, a lot of things about Rastafari. I think we gotta do another show about a little bit more of the history and more books and stuff.
Anytime.
Because this is pretty much
Anytime.
that's this is like opening chapter one of a 12-book saga.
Maybe.
And it's
Maybe. I'd
better
love
than
to do
Star
another one.
Wars.
Yeah.
So remember, Mike, don't get drunk, get lumped up, my brother. See
Get
you
lumped
soon.
up.